Hi, and welcome to Bear Hill Shire. We're doing the Cruthaich and Armachd discipline molding and casting tutorial video part 3. In the first video we talked about making the blanks out of clay. So as you can see here, we have one of these blanks that we made from hardened clay. So we shaped it, baked it, and then we poured the molding resin, actually not poured but brushed on the molding resin all over it. One of the things I forgot to mention in the first video was that the first time we tried it, we did about 6 coats and it peeled off and got a lot of holes in it. This time we did about 20 coats, give or take. And once you pull the rubber latex off of the mold blank, you got the shape of that. And the problem that I ran into was a couple things. One is that the mold ends up looking like this. So it's very flexible. There's really no backing there. So anything that you pour in there is going to possibly push the mold around like that. And that changes the way that the shape is. So here's a good example. If I show you the badge here that I made, this is the wax pour that came from it. So it's almost an exact copy, but I did have to do a lot of cleanup on the wax. The rubber molds were basically destroyed, getting them off the wax. So I'm open to any ideas or suggestions on how to prevent that from happening, because it'd be nice to have those molds to use again. I still have my original, so it's not the end of the world. I could start over from scratch. Again, not really fun, but again. The sides had a lot of dimpling, so they were kind of convex in there like that. So I had to take a lot of wax and just dip it in there and then shave it off with a hot knife. So I took my X-Acto knife and I held it under a candle and carved off the wax. I tried to make it as smooth as possible. You can see there's still some warpage. It's not the best reproduction, I should say. But you know, it came out okay. It is a lot of work to get to this point, and I'd hate to see it all fail because of one part of the process here. So we're trying to do this as by the book as we can. What's going to happen next in this part is we're going to plaster of Paris the wax so that we can melt the wax out of the plaster of Paris, and then we'll have our negative shape in plaster of Paris. One of the things about this clay is that it's great and it holds a definite good shape, and as you can see, you can do some really cool stuff with it. This is the Cruthaich counselor badge, and that's all clay and a little bit of string, painted up really nice, and it looks really nice. We also did that with the Cruthaich and the Armachd and the Cruthaich badges for the privy counselors. The downside is that when you wear this clay, part of the order, part of the charter says to put a badge on a chain. Well, if you see any of our fighting videos, you know that you're getting hit with heavy rattan, heavy steel across your chest sometimes, and if it's clay, it's a really good chance it'll just shatter and break, and all that work went to nothing. So I'd like to go there as a last resort, which is why we're trying to reproduce these in lost wax to make pewter or zinc or aluminum molds. So yeah, we could do that if this fails, and you know, the best part about these things is that every time you do it, you learn a little bit more about what not to do, especially. That's a big thing. But this is the next step. So the first step, we took our clay, we sculpted it, we hardened it, we waxed it up with the mold builder, and then now the third step is going to be putting the wax blanks into plaster of Paris. To do that, it's actually pretty simple. So you take some retainers or cups that's going to hold the shape that you want. You want to make sure that they're sprayed down with some kind of mold release, again, cooking spray, because I don't want to have to peel this plastic off of the plaster of Paris. The less I have to mess with it, the better. And I do want the plaster of Paris to be in an open space so that it can dry out. I'm just going to take my blank and I'm going to put it in here. Now, I don't care if this gets lost. That's the whole point of this wax, is that it's going to be lost. So I'm going to put it right in the middle, both of these, and we're going to mix up the plaster of Paris. Now, this is definitely going to be a mixed consistency kind of recipe. So kind of like cookie dough, you don't really need to have exact measurements unless you're really going for that. But all you really do is you pour some water in a cup, clean, the more clean the better. Probably too much water in there, I don't know if you can see that, but it's about, I'd say, a good cup maybe 3/4 of a cup. And I'm just going to start adding the plaster of Paris in. Now, as soon as I do this, sets hard in 20 to 30 minutes. This is DAP plaster of Paris, and I got this from Menards. I think it's $7 or $8 a bucket, maybe 10. I'm not sure. I'm sure you can order it online. I'm sure you can get it from Michael's. I'm sure you can get it all over the place. But it's just the old school, what you would mix up to put on your walls for patches and mortaring and things like that. I'm going to dump the plaster Paris in my cup. And I'm just going to kind of drag some in there. And I'm going to be stirring the whole time that I'm doing this because I really don't want it to set up until I'm ready for it to set up. And remember, you can always add more water, but sometimes it's hard to put it this way. They're not running out of water anytime soon, but this stuff ain't cheap. So you may want to not go with water in the bucket first. As you can see, this is pretty runny. And I do want a more runny mixture here. I don't want like drywall paste or cookie dough. That's obviously too hard. One thing I found out working with drywall over the years is that once you get past that point of consistency where you've got liquids and solids together, if you don't get it in the right viscosity right away, you're going to end up with a lot of lumps. And lumps in casting is bad because then that's one place where the mold isn't going to conform around what you're trying to make it conform around quickly. It's just going to sit there and clump up. So you'll get pockets and gaps. And pockets and gaps and bubbles and depressions are not a good thing. So I'm going to get this as mixed up as I can. Again, it does set up in about 10 minutes, so you do want to watch that time. And the longer you play with this and the harder it gets to mix, the more likely it is that it's not going to set up correctly. Too thin and you take a chance of it becoming brittle. Too thick and it's never going to pour around what you want it to pour around. And that's really the whole point, is to make it pour. So I don't need to fill up these cups. I just need to make sure that I've got enough in there to give me at least a ½ inch all the way around. And that's what I'm shooting for. That way it's not going to burn through the mold. And that's about what I want. I want about the consistency of really soupy yogurt. So you see how it just kind of pours and fills in all the spaces. And that's exactly what I want. And you can see those lumps. They do kind of make it kind of difficult to get everything in the right place. Now that one did push around. So while it's still wet, I'm just going to put it back where it's supposed to go. And might as well use it all up because it's just going to turn into a brick here after about 20 minutes. You want to be really careful rinsing these out. Any kind of clumps or lumps you don't want to put down your drain. It will definitely screw up your plumbing. So I would say most definitely, as much as you can, water it down before you rinse it out. And if you have any clumps, put them on like cardboard, let them dry out, and then throw it away. So that's the basics of that. This takes about, again, 20 minutes to set up. So I'm going to leave that there, and I'm just going to give it a couple taps to get some air bubbles out. And hopefully my wax blank is in the middle. Now I do see some marks here on the side, but I think that's from paint that was there from before. Again, the cleaner the cups you have, the less questions you're going to have about consistency. So for right now, we're going to let that sit. 20 minutes, we'll come back to it. We'll drop them out of the molds and see what they look like.